Okay. I wanted to go over one other thing that I felt like I were a little bit weak on the quiz. So on the quiz, I'm moving onward, but make sure that you know that in order to have a sentence, because remember, I'm layering information, so it's going to get a little bit more complicated, and a little bit more complicated, a little bit more complicated. So if you haven't mastered, it's not like math. Listen, if you haven't mastered some of this basic stuff, as I start layering, I'm going to expect you to know it. So make sure that you're really mastering this stuff, okay? But one of the things that I wanted to kind of show you is when you're joining two independent clauses, or which we also call sentences, right? When you're joining them with what we call a hard transition or a conjunctive adverb, there's a very specific way to punctuate it. We talked about it yesterday, but there was an example in the quiz, and a lot of you got it wrong. The other, I'm making myself a note. There's one other thing I want to talk about one more time, okay? So look at this. I have two options to punctuate this correctly. The way it's written is a run-on sentence. Did you know that? Okay, it's a run-on sentence without a comma place. So it's got to be punctuated. What are my two options here? You can tell me.
Okay, so you can do we went to the store, semicolon before, however, and then a comma after.
That's one option. Everybody see that? Okay, so this is when, this rule only applies when you have two independent clauses. If you only have one independent clause and the word however is in the middle of it, we're going to talk about that today. Totally different rules. So if you see one of these conjunctive adverbs like meanwhile, therefore, however, if you see those in here, the first thing you need to do is say, are they joining two independent clauses? If they are, then this is a possible rule. What's the other possibility? Yep. Okay. Very good. All right. So, or you can do a period after store, and then however, capital however, comma. Okay. Again, do I have two independent clauses here? I do. These rules apply only when you have two independent clauses. Okay. If the conjunctive adverb or the transition word, whatever you want to call it, comes in the middle of one independent clause, is punctuated totally differently. It's actually punctuated like a non-essential clause. So you put commas on either side. So the big deal is, and the way ACT is going to test you is they will test you how to punctuate these, and you will need to know, am I dealing here with joining two complete thoughts or two independent clauses, two sentences, or am I dealing with just one sentence and a transition in the middle? Does that make sense? So we're going to talk about how to deal with it when it's in the middle of the sentence. This is when you're joining two independent clauses. Everybody got it? Okay. Underneath your English ACT strategies, I really do want you to write this rule. It is important to know, and it was on your test, and some of you did not know. A present participle can never be what? Yep, can never be the conjugated verb. Or the main verb of the sentence, right? So what do you have to have in order to have a sentence? A subject and a conjugated verb. Okay, so if you have a present participle and no conjugated verb, it's a fragment. Everybody understand that? Now, past participles, that rule doesn't apply. Past participles actually can be the main verb, and that's the reason, because they're not really in that context. They're not really past participle, but the past tense and past participle are the same. I know, I just don't worry about that, but that's the reason why, in case you want to know. All right, so the other thing that I want you to know is, you know that the subject of a sentence can be both a what and a what, or a what. Subject of sentence, what two parts of speech can the subject be? Noun or pronoun, okay? So if you put like the subject, in order to have a sentence, I need to have a noun and a conjugated verb, you got that part wrong, because it really is a noun or a pronoun, right? One other thing, I'm going to hit home, and then we're going to move on to chapter 4. These group pronouns, many, most, several, few. They're tricky. they can be subject pronouns. That means they can serve as a subject of a sentence. But if you put two certain phrases behind any of them, they then no longer cease to be subject pronouns, and therefore they can't be the subject. What are those two? Of whom and of which. So make sure you remember that. What if you, there's another phrase though, that if it comes after these, that it can be the subject of a sentence. What's the one that does make it a subject? Anybody know? Of them. So of them makes it a subject. Of whom or of which discredits it as a subject. What if it's just by itself? What if it's just many went to the football game? Is it a subject? Yeah, it is. So if it's by itself or have of them, it can be a subject. Okay, cool. Hey, Aaron. We're just reviewing a little bit from the quiz yesterday, and now we're about to start in our book on chapter 4. So if everybody will open up their book on chapter 4. And we just finished the bell ringer too. So just make sure you get those done. And we're going to fly through this. Okay, so I want you to plug in this week. I know this stuff isn't the most fun subject material, but it's going to make you a killer writer. And then that's always a good thing. When I went off to college, I had such good English teachers. When I went off to college, everybody would struggle with writing papers, and they would come to my room. So that's what I want you to be. All right? And these grammar rules are going to help you be that way. You can like write with a lot of confidence. Okay. So as you see, no, you don't. Let's get this on here. I'll plug in too. We're going to be talking about essential and non-essential clauses. And you might say, well, Ms. Redders, we already talked about non-essential clauses, and you're right, we did. Today we're going to add a little bit more knowledge to what we know about non-essential clauses. We're going to talk about two kinds of essential clauses. If non-essential, okay, so review really quickly. What do you know about non-essential clauses? Throw them out to me. That's right. They're not necessary for this sentence. So for the sentence to be a grammatically correct sentence, they're not necessary. You can pick them up and you can throw them away, right? What else, Ella? They are not sentences, right? So they cannot stand alone. What else? Maybe most important thing. They're set off by commas. And the reason why that's the most important for you guys to know is because that's what the ACT is going to test. They're going to test whether or not you know how to punctuate a non-essential clause. We know that if a non-essential clause begins the sentence, it's considered a dependent clause. And how many commas will it have? One, okay? If it's in the middle of the sentence, usually in between the subject and the verb, how many commas? 2. If it's at the end of the sentence, so you have the whole independent clause and then you have the non-essential clause, how many commas? 1. So it'll be comma and then the rest of that. Okay. All right, so let's review for just a minute what we already know about non-essential clauses besides all that. All right, so we talked about this. Let's look at these 3 types. Let's remind ourselves of these 3 types of non-essential clauses. And guys, I promise you, you've got to be able to recognize these on the ACT in order to know how to punctuate them. All right, so everybody see this one? The ancient Buick, which Madeline purchased from newspaper ad, belches black smoke whenever she accelerates. So what's the non-essential clause and what's its type? Yeah. It's a W word, that's its type. All right, so the non-essential clause is which Madeline purchased from newspaper ad, right? Everybody got it? Everybody remember? All right, so everybody say with me, W words. Oh, come on, y'all can do that better. Come on, Aaron, you play along at home. Ready, go. W words. All right.
words.
A type of non-essential clause. You like that? W. That's not a W. What would be W? I don't know. Y'all are not helping me out. Y'all are the cheerleaders. All right. So let's look at a second type. It is the perpetual dread of fear. The fear of fear itself. I know you can't see that. Let's see if I can make it smaller. I cannot. So let's see if I do like that. All right. Nope, never mind. All right, so it is the perpetual, oh no, don't you do that. There we go. Okay. All right, so let's look at this one. It is the perpetual dread of fear, the fear of fear that shapes the face of a brave man. Y'all like that sentence? That's a good sentence. What type of non-essential, somebody tell me what the non-essential clause is, and then what type of it, of non-essential clause it is.
Fear.
The fear of fear, absolutely. What type of non-essential clause is it? It isn't a positive. You got, remember, an appositive has meat. The meat of that phrase is going to be a noun, all right? So we've got the fear, that's a noun, and we've got of fear, which is prepositional phrase. So the fear of fear. And do you see how it describes the perpetual dread? So appositives generally describe the subject. This should all be a review, right? Okay, good. All right. What kind of non-essential clause is this one? The tourist walking slowly followed the, that word you can't see is guide. Followed the guide through the museum. What is the NEC here? What? It is a participial phrase. Very good. And how do you know it's a participial phrase? ING, right? Remember, present participles are, you take the verb and you add ing to it, so walking slowly. Can this be the main verb of the sentence? If this was the only verb in this sentence, would it be a fragment? Yes, it would be. So it can't be the main verb of the sentence. This cannot be the conjugated verb. We do not consider present participles conjugated verbs. So if that was the only verb you had in the sentence, it would be a fragment. Okay? All right, so let's say them all together. The three types of non-essential clauses we've already talked about are ready, go. W words, appositives, and participial phrases. Now, I told you which participial phrase the ACT will, kind of participial phrase the ACT will most often test you on. Y'all remember which one it was? Usually it will be a present participial phrase, dealing with a present participle, but sometimes it could be past. So, but mostly that's what it will be. Okay, all right, so I'm on page, in your book, I'm on page 52, all right? So, everybody look in the middle of the page where it says important in bold. Mary, read that and everybody highlight it. Okay, so here's the kind of crazy thing about the ACT, and that's what this says right here. So everybody highlight that, star it, underline it. They love to test you on punctuating non-essential clauses, but here's the problem. You sort of have to be able, in order to know where to put the commas, you sort of have to know where the non-essential clause begins and where it ends, okay? So if it's a W word non-essential clause, you know where it begins. And usually it's pretty logical where it ends, but you need to practice spotting where it begins and where they end, okay? So let's look at some examples of how they may do you wrong, that ACT. All right, so look at this. The Tower of London, which was begun by William the Conqueror in 1078, is one of the largest and most imposing fortifications in England. What's wrong with this sentence? And I'm gonna see if I can is this what's blocking y'all, Steve? Yeah. All right, is there a non-essential clause in this sentence? Yes or no? Yes, where is it, Caitlin? All right, and so what is it missing? Comma. So y'all, this is very much what you will see on the ACT. It will underline this section and it will say, you know, to about here, and it'll give you different options. And one option would be no change. Well, this one's got to be changed. You need a comma right here. So does everybody see how the non-essential clause begins with the W word and it actually ends right before the verb? This is a normal construction, usually between the subject and the verb is where the non-essential clause comes. Does everybody see, is everybody able to identify the end of that non-essential clause, even if I hadn't bolded it? Okay, let's look at another example. The Tower of London, which was begun by William the Conqueror in 1978, or in 1078, is one of the most largest imposing fortifications. What's it missing here? Eric, what's it missing in this one? The first comma, very good. Okay, so y'all, this is what? This is what I'm trying to show y'all, that this is what the ACT will do. They'll either leave off the first comma or they'll leave off the last comma. Let's look at one more example. Tower of London, which was begun. What's wrong with this one? Jack? It's missing both. Okay, so this is you will have absolutely, on every ACT English section you ever take, you'll have at least one or two of these where they have non-essential clauses and they either leave off the first comma, leave off the last comma, or leave off both commas. And you'll need to know that the right answer is putting the two commas around it. Okay, everybody understand? Got it? Feel like you're fortified in this area? Okay. Mary, you sure? Okay. All right, look at the very bottom of page 52 and highlight that, and Caitlin, read it for us. Yep, the very bottom. Okay. Here is a strategy. I want you in your ACT English, I want you to write this strategy down. And I wish I could flip back and forth between the two. Go to your ACT English strategy section and I want you to write this down. When dealing with NECs, cross out the NEC to test if it is essential or not. Okay, y'all, let me tell you this. Are y'all too busy writing to hear me say this? When you have that test booklet, if you think you're dealing with a non-essential clause, the best way to test to see if it's a non-essential clause is to cross it out, okay? And if you can still read the sentence without the clause, then it is indeed non-essential, and then therefore it's going to need commas, right? If you take it out, you cross it out, and the sentence no longer makes sense, then it's not a non-essential clause, it's essential, and therefore no commas are needed. So let me give you an example of this. And here's what I want to say, and we're going to talk about it in just a minute too. Please, 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 if you think you're dealing with a non-essential clause or you're not sure where it begins and ends, actually take the pencil on the actual test and don't try to just cross it out mentally, cross it out physically. Because if you cross it out mentally, you might go back and reread it wrong. So actually take that booklet as yours, make all the markings in it so you get all the points you can. So if you think if you're trying to figure out, I'm dealing with a non-essential clause here, cross it out, just physically cross it out with your pencil, and then read that sentence again. If the sentence still is a grammatically correct sentence with a subject and a conjugated verb, then it is not essential. And so the right punctuation will be 2 commas. If you cross it out and you read it and it no longer makes any sense and there's not a subject and conjugated verb, then it is essential. And so you don't need commas. Everybody understand that? Okay. So, for example, if I was working with this sentence, the Tower of London, well, let's say this one because there's no commas. Let's say that they've underlined this bold area and they give me a ways to fix it. And I can't figure out, do I need commas or do I not? So I'm going to just take my physical pen or pencil, because I'm taking ACT, and I'm just going to cross through this, and then I'm going to read it and see if it still makes sense. Does it still make sense? The Tower of London is one of the largest and most imposing fortifications in England. Does it still make sense grammatically? Does it still have a subject and a verb? It does, right? Y'all all agree? Is everybody awake and agree? Okay, so if I can cross it out and it still makes sense, then it's non-essential and it needs commas. All right, and then that would be the correct answer choice, whichever one gave you those 2 commas. Here's the reason why you need to physically cross it out and not just do it mentally. Non-essential clauses can actually be really long and very complex and confusing. You see how long this one is, which was begun by William the Conqueror in 1078? They can be even longer than that. So it gets confusing where they start and where they end. So if you cross out with your pen and not just mentally, you won't lose track. That makes sense? That's an important skill. Okay? All right. Holy cannoli, Batman, another twist. Y'all know Batman? Good. I'm trying. Sophie, you don't know Batman? Anybody else not know Batman? Batman, it's really Robin. Robin is Batman's sidekick, and he likes to say holy about everything. So, holy cannoli, Batman, another twist. Non-essential transition words. Now I'm on top of page 53. Everybody look at top of page 53, and Eric, read that first paragraph up there, and everybody highlight.
While non-essential clauses can be very long, they can also consist of single transition words and short phrases. Common examples include however, in fact, moreover, and on the other hand. Like longer non-essential clauses, these words and phrases must be surrounded by commas when they appear in the middle of the sentence.
Okay, so we just learned another type of non-essential clause. So we've talked about three. We've talked about W word clauses, appositives, and participial phrases. And today I'm giving you a fourth type of non-essential clause. You need to put this fourth type in your brain. Okay, so everybody write in the margin, right on top of non-essential transition words and phrases, I want you to write fourth type of NEC. It is these what we call transition words. Remember, I just told you we're going to talk about this. Transition words. And so, or phrases. They're not all just words. So like, in the meantime, on the other hand, by the way, if those say, or however, therefore, meanwhile, if those come in the middle of a sentence, one sentence, we're no longer talking about joining two independent clauses together. I'm talking about one sentence. If any of those words come in the middle of a sentence, they are considered non-essential clauses. And you can, if you read the sentence without them, the sentence should still make sense. They also should be set off by commas. Any questions about that? Okay, so look at, do you see where it says important? The next one, I want you to read that and highlight that. Ella, read that for me. 53, middle, where it says important in bold. Okay, so does everybody, I just told y'all this, but I'm emphasizing it again. When you think something is not essential and you're dealing with one, please, please, please cross it out physically and not just mentally, okay? All right, so I got a little Batman clip. I think if it'll play. Yeah, this is for you, Sophie. It's a little Batman clip. It's kind of dark though. Oh wait, hang on. Hang on. How do I make it stop? Okay, hang on, I gotta get my speaker so you can hear it. Oh, holy cannoli. I don't know what I did with my speakers. Oh, there they are there. This is for Sophie. Y'all, Sophie, this is like bonus education today. You do. This won't help you on the ACT, but it'll help you in life. And life is probably more important than ACT, right? Everybody agree? All right, thanks, Gracie. And I hope that worked. Let's see. Y'all ready? Oh, now it's not going to show. Oh, y'all, technology. Why aren't my speakers working? I got a lot to do today. I don't have time for you guys to mess me up. Come on. All right, well, he says holy rusted metal Batman, and it's funny. Okay. We got to do what we can to make ACT prep exciting, right?
Right.
All right. Oh, here we go. Here we go. No, that's Aaron.
Aaron's still have a Wi-Fi forever.
Maybe. There we go. Here we go. Here we go. That's Robin. Y'all are supposed to think that's funny. Come on. All right, so he says, holy roasted metal, Batman. He's like, what? Holy? He's like, yeah, the metal. It's all full of holes. You know, holy. All right, I tried. That's what I call crash and burn. All right, non-essential transition words and phrases. All right, so here we go. So a single transition word or a short phrase can also count as a non-essential clause. Here they are. Everybody look at them right now. Drink them in, take them in. Now you need to know. All right, got them? However, in fact, moreover, on the other hand, moreover's on there twice. It must be important. All right, set these off with commas just as you do other non-essential clauses. I put that on there twice too because it's important. Everybody understand? So what's the fourth kind of non-essential clause? Transition words. Thank you, Sophie. All right, so crossing out strategy. We already talked about this. Make sure you do it with your pen and not just mentally. Okay. You will need to think carefully about where in the sentence it is logical for the non-essential clause to end. Consider your answer choices and plug them back into the underlined portion. So here's the deal. If they are testing you, like they've left off a comma at the end of the non-essential clause, you've got to think logically, where does this end? Non-essential clauses usually come in between the subject and the verb. So usually the non-essential clause ends right before the verb, but not always. So you've got to just consider your answer choices, plug them back into the underlined position portion and see which works. Everybody understand what I'm talking about? Okay. All right. Now I'm at the top of page 54. Everybody star and highlight at the very top where it says important and read that for me, Mary. Yeah, on top of page 54. Stay with me, girl. Okay, guess what, y'all? Guess what? Just because there are two commas in a sentence doesn't mean there's a non-essential clause. You cannot assume that just because you see two commas that it's a non-essential clause. Why? Come on, use your brains, think logically. Why? Why can't you just assume? Well, prepositional phrases actually don't need commas unless they're in a series. If they're items in a series. Think about it. Okay, I'm going to tell you, but you guys should be thinking of this. Aren't there other uses for commas in the English language other than to set off some non-essential clauses? Yes. Okay, so here's the deal. Do not, when you see two commas, don't just assume it's non-essential clauses. Run your grammar tests. Remember? Your grammar test rules are, oh, is this non-essential? Can I take it out? Can I read the sentence and it's still grammatically correct? So please, 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 on the ACT, don't get caught in the trap by thinking, oh, there are two commas, it's non-essential, right? So let's look at some examples of that. So look at this. London, which was one of the largest and most important cities in Europe during the Middle Ages, remains an important financial and cultural city today, okay? So, what do you see here? Is this sentence grammatically correct? If you had this on the ACT and part of it was underlined, what would you correct anything in this? Come on, take a risk. It's okay if you're wrong. Jack.
You take out which all the way to.
You could, right? And could you say London remains an important financial and cultural city today? Yes. So are we dealing with a non-essential clause here? Yes. So is the way it's written correct, or do I need to change anything? It is written correctly. Okay, so this is an example of a non-essential clause. So you just had to run your test. Can I take it out? And if I can, is it still a complete sentence? And it is. So it is correct. Now, let's change up the wording here a little bit. During the Middle Ages, London was one of the largest and most important cities in Europe. And today, it remains an important financial and cultural city. What am I dealing with here? Anybody have any idea? It's not a run-on. But look at the clauses. Do I have a non-essential clause here? Run your test. If you take out what's between the two commas, does it still make sense? Very good. So we have commas here, but this is what we call an essential clause. You cannot take it out of the sentence and it still be a sentence. But is it grammatically correct the way it is? Are the commas correct in this? Yes, they are. Why do you need a comma here? You just do. No, you can't ever say that on the ACT. You have to know a grammar rule. Why? Come on.
Oh, because during the Middle Ages.
During the Middle Ages is what? No, not a complete thought, but it is. So what do we call those? Oh, come on. What's this word? Y'all know this? No. It is a dependent clause. This is a dependent clause. Dependent clauses, when they begin a sentence, they always are set off by a comma. How do you know it's a dependent clause? Because this beautiful word right here is called a no. A subordinating conjunction. Y'all got page 37. Be best friends. Cozy up next to the subordinating conjunction. Any phrase that begins with a subordinating conjunction, how can I get y'all to remember that? Subordinating conjunction. Come on. Any phrase that begins with a subordinating conjunction, any phrase is going to be a fragment or a dependent clause and therefore has to be set off. So, and then we got another one here. Why do I have this here? You know this. This one's easy. You know this. Why's that there? Come on. Yes. So put that into another sentence. Put that into a grammar rule that we've learned. I'm pointing over there because I wrote it up there the other day, but it's not really on that board. What do you have here? Come on, I'm giving y'all conjunction. Yes, a comma and a fan voice conjunction. So you have two sentences. See, London was one of the largest and most important cities in Europe. One complete sentence, correct, right? We have a dependent clause, an independent clause, and then we have another independent clause. Today it remains an important financial and cultural city. So we have taken two, remember last chapter, one of the ways you can join two independent clauses is with a comma and a fan voice conjunction. So here's the whole point. Y'all understand what the point is? Just because you have two commas doesn't mean it's a non-essential clause. So if you're wondering, am I dealing with a non-essential clause, try to take out the words that are between the two commas and see if it makes sense. If it doesn't, then you're not dealing with non-essential clause. They're trying to test you on something else. So in this, if we took out what's in between, it would say during the Middle Ages, and today it remains important, blah, blah, blah. So you can't do that. So you have to figure out, are these commas there? Is there a grammatical reason why these commas are there? So you got to think about these things we've been talking about. Oh, it's two independent clauses. Oh, I can join it with a comma and a fan voice. That's correct. Oh, it's a subordinated conjunction. It's going to be a dependent clause, so that's got to be there. Oh, see? Yeah? Y'all think y'all can do it on your own? You sure? All right, let's try. All right. Be warned, my friends, some sentences containing commas that set off non-essential clauses may also contain commas that serve other purposes unrelated to NECs. So here's what you also need to know. You may have a non-essential clause with two commas, and then you may have commas for other reasons as well. So you've really got to know your non-essential clauses, right? But then you also have got to know your other comma rules. And that's what we're going to talk about in the coming weeks. But I guess my biggest takeaway for you here is I don't want you just to assume a comma because you see two commas that you're dealing with non-essential clauses. You've got to train your brain to be able to find those non-essential clauses, so then you'll know, okay, those commas are supposed to be there for non-essential clauses, but you got to know, okay, it's not supposed to be there. Or this is supposed to be there for a different reason. Okay? Any questions? All right, so let's look at this example. Sumo wrestlers, a full contact sport in which competitors attempt to force one another out of the circular ring, originated in Japan, which remains the only country in the world where it is practiced. Somebody tell me where the non-essential clause is.
Which remains the only country in the world where it is practiced.
Absolutely. Okay, there's another one in there.
Originated in Japan.
Well, yeah. No, I would say that is not. That's not enough. That's actually essential, because if you took it out, it would say sumo wrestlers, a full contact sport in which competitors attempt to force one another out of a circular ring, which remains the only country in the world where it's practiced. So, did you see how I ran my test? So, originated in Japan is actually essential, even though it's set off by commas. So it is not, but there is one other one. And I'll give you a hint. The kind of non-essential clause it is in a positive. Nope, that would be your subject. That's what it's about. But I appreciate you taking a risk. I do. Come on. Remember, if it's not the beginning of the sentence or the end of the sentence, what is it? What is it?
I think you take this out and which competitors attempt to force. Because you could say sumo wrestlers a full contact sport originating in Japan.
Yes, you could, but so if you look at where my commas are. Remember, non-essential clause, this is correct. So non-essential clauses are going to fall between two commas if it's not at the beginning or the end. We've already established that this is one at the end. So you see that, and we've already established this as the subject. So come on, what's in between two commas that I could take out? Come on, y'all. What is it, Eric? You know. What's in between two commas that we hadn't talked about already? And run your test. Can it be taken out and still be a full sentence? Yeah.
A full context for all the way to 3.
Yep, all the way to 3. So this is an example of a really long, wordy, non-essential clause. But remember, it falls between the two. So can I take it out? Let's run our test. Sumo wrestlers originated in Japan, which remains the only country in the world where it is practiced. What do you think? I think this really should say sumo wrestling originated in Japan. I think I have a mistake there. Because sumo wrestlers, this describes that. So anyway, long story short, you could take this out. If this said sumo wrestling originated in Japan, which remains the only country in the world, or you could take out both of those. Sumo wrestlers originated in Japan. It's still a sentence. Does that make sense? Okay. Everybody understand where we're going? Now's the time. All right, so strategy. If you cannot hear where the non-essential clause belongs, take your pencil, draw a line through this section, and take it out. If the remaining section does not make sense, erase the line and cross out a different section and try again. Okay, so here's another strategy. If you think you're dealing with a non-essential clause, but you don't know where it begins and ends, try just crossing out where you think it begins and ends. Read the sentence without whatever you cross the line through. See if it makes sense, if it's a sentence, if there's a subject, if there's a verb. If it doesn't make sense, then try a different part, okay? So you can do trial and error when you're trying to figure out where the non-essential clause begins and where it ends. Does everybody understand that strategy? Okay. Now I'm about to give you some practice. Maybe, or we're going to talk about 2 commas versus, well, we've really already talked about that. Okay, so last thing that they talk about on page 55, and then I'm going to let you, I'm going to let you do that for homework. On page 55, the last thing that they talk about are these hard transitions, like however. And how do you know when you use a period or a semicolon or when you use two commas? And I think we've already established that. When do you use, when you're dealing with a hard transition like however or meanwhile or therefore, how do you know if you need two commas around the hard transition or a period and another comma around the top front of it? Anybody? Remember? There's one really hard and fast rule that should help. Anybody know the rule? Oh, y'all, come on. I'm really not that bad of a teacher, right? Come on. Hard transitions, however, therefore, moreover, right? Meanwhile, how do I know when I have a sentence how to punctuate those words? What's the difference between when it needs two commas, like it's a non-essential clause, or it needs a period or a semicolon? How do I know the difference between the two? There's one key way. It's the difference between what we talked about yesterday in chapter 3 and what we're talking about today in chapter 4. That's a clue. Really, nobody knows? Come on, Caitlin, you know. No? Sophie? Oh my gosh. Ella, you know? Oh my goodness. Okay. So when I'm dealing with hard transitions, everybody look, everybody plug in, put your brain on right here. When I'm dealing with hard transitions in a sentence, however, therefore, meanwhile, moreover, those cute little words, how do I know whether or not I need two commas around that hard transition, or how do I know I need a period or a semicolon instead?
Do a semicolon, comma, whatever it needs to be given clause, but you use it two commas when it's not essential.
Correct. You are correct. And then this is the hard, fast rule, though, that I'm trying to get y'all to remember. When that hard transition is joining two sentences, that's when you need a period or a semicolon, right? Because period and semicolons are ways we can join two independent clauses. When it is a non-essential clause and it's in the middle of one sentence, if you only have one independent clause and you have however in the middle of it, then that is when you do commas on either side, that transition, okay? So one sentence, commas on either side, it's essentially a non-essential clause, okay? If you have two sentences that you're joining together with a hard transition, then you need a period or a semicolon. Okay, don't move yet. Let me tell you what you're going to do. I want you to do page 56, identifying non-essential words and phrases for homework. Then I also want you to read 57 and 58. It's really easy. The bottom line is you can also use parentheses and dashes to set off non-essential clauses, and it's completely stylistic. And the only rule that you need to know is you cannot interchange them. So like if you have a non-essential clause and you're setting off with a dash, you have to use a dash at the end of it. You can't use a dash and a comma or a parentheses and a comma. And the only other thing is hard transitions, they always have to have commas. They cannot be set off with dashes or parentheses. So go ahead and read 57 and 58. And so tonight for homework, I want you to do 56 and then exercises on 59 and 60 for homework. Okay, and we'll go over that tomorrow. All right, let me make sure Aaron heard all that. Aaron, did you hear that tonight for homework? If you will,
Yeah, I heard all that.
You heard it all?
Yes, Mom.
All right, good deal. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow, okay?
All right, understood. Bye.
Bye.